Hello, everybody, and welcome to Swisslog's IMHX webinar on micro-fulfilment. I'm Adam Fox, Swisslog's Business Development Manager, and today I wanted to talk to you about the latest developments that Swisslog have had in e-grocery and micro-fulfilment. More specifically, I want to talk a little bit about Swisslog and what qualifies us to be able to talk to you today regarding micro-fulfilment. I want to touch on the classifications because micro-fulfilment seems to be a catch-all description of quite a lot of different solutions. Then I want to touch on looking at the different technologies that we've considered and actually deployed in micro-fulfilment. Then I want to drill into a typical operation for a retail-based micro-fulfilment center. And then software is key. I want to look at software because it is so important for the successful running of such an operation. And then I want to look back for you to see some of the key learnings that we've had from our journey within micro-fulfilment. So a little bit about Swisslog first. Back in 2014, Swisslog were purchased by KUKA. For those of you who don't know, KUKA is a leading or one of the largest global manufacturers of robots. And they have a very worldwide reach. They have over 100 offices worldwide. And what that means is wherever you are, there will likely be a KUKA office that can support you in local language and custom, etc. And that's pretty much true for Swisslog as well. We're very much a global-based system integrator. You'll see that it says we have 10 own products. We're a manufacturing system integrator, so those 10 products are actually solutions. So we have factories that manufacture our own cranes and conveyors, etc. Pretty much the only thing we don't manufacture is Autostore, which we will be covering a bit later in this presentation. Very importantly, we do put a lot of emphasis on software, and you'll see there there's more than 560 employees in our software division within Swisslog. And that's because we need to keep this really high level of support for our software solutions called Sync for all of our customers, so we can constantly support you and ensure smooth running. So what have we done within e-grocery and MFC? Well, I have to give credit to my colleagues in Swisslog Inc., which is our US subsidiary. They very much have been leading the way for us. And as most people know, MFC US is probably the most mature market. But we've sold projects in North America, in Europe, in the Middle East and Asia, so very much global. And it's given us some great learnings that we can evolve for our next solutions. We've had many hours, and I'm sure it's much more than 6,000 hours now, consultancy and development and designs of these solutions, to the point that we even have our own global MFC function to evolve this to meet your requirements. We've got more than 30 customers in this field worldwide, and most importantly, I mentioned software before, we have a very mature and advanced software solution that's been specifically tailored for MSC. Some of the customers that we've dealt with, I'm not going to go through them all now, but I'm sure you agree there's some great customers there, and I'd like to thank them for using Swisslog and their continued trust in us. So I want to talk a little bit about this classification that I mentioned at the start. You do find that MFC is a very widely discussed term. Most people think of MFC in this first context where it's attached to a store, and this is probably in attached to a traditional supermarket store, and it offers such things as click and collect or curbside if you're in the US, and home delivery. So that's what we think of, but we've also seen MFC be referred to as small solutions in regional fulfillment centers as well. Probably some people call those dark stores. And also within central fulfillment centres. But I think today I want to concentrate on that first category, the micro fulfillment centres. And typically, as you'll see here, this is a nice indication of what we're talking about. This is either a bolted on or an extension to an existing supermarket facility, or a repurposed area of the supermarket or a back room. So we'll come back to that shortly, but I wanted to talk a little bit about a comparison of the automation engines, I'd like to call them, that we use in micro fulfillment. And if you're not in the UK, you probably won't get the pun of comparing apples to apples. But so what I wanted to explain was that in Swisslog, as I said, we're manufactured. We make a fabulous shuttle system, which is like a third generation shuttle. So it's very advanced in terms of its efficiency, its energy usage and throughput, etc. We're also a primary partner, I think the globally leading partner now for Autostore. And these are the two solutions that we find most optimal to be considered for MFC. Incidentally, I'm not going to cover Autostore or these shuttles and the way that they operate in this presentation. There's been an awful lot of presentations shown in the past about those, but do please visit swisslog.com. We've got some great resources on there, and you can see Cyclone Carrier or Autostore in more detail, or reach out to me or any of my colleagues. But let's talk about a comparison for those. So if we think about these micro fulfillment centers in a supermarket, typically the ceilings are not that tall, which is very suitable for Autostore and not so suitable for shuttles. Also, we find the floors are not specifically designed to take the high loads that shuttle systems can impose on them, whereas Autostore is very kind to floors and it does spread the load very well. We do find as well that the way that the storage grids of Autostore works versus multiple aisles that you need with a shuttle system means that you don't have to do so much of a consolidation exercise. That's where when SKUs become low in quantity in a bin or in a compartment in a bin, it has to be taken out and placed in another bin, defragmentation as we'd call it. Shuttles as well, because of the aisles in the system, the need for the front end conveyor systems, we do find we get less bins in these smaller areas. So the density is much greater for Autostore. And as well, regards robustness, we find Autostore is exceptionally robust, which makes it particularly suitable for MFC. So we have found in the MFCs that we've deployed, certainly Autostore has been the best solution. And to recap some of the big advantages there, we can get a lot more SKUs in because of this storage density. The defragmentation, we don't need to consolidate so much. Autostore, if you've seen some of the other videos about, has this natural slot in where the fast movers migrate to the top, the medium movers in the middle, and the slower movers down the bottom. Also, there's this lack of single point of failure, which is excellent. So if a robot goes down on Autostore, which is very infrequent, a trained supervisor or somebody can retrieve that, pull it off, restart the system, and it can carry on running. So we don't have this failure of operation, which is so vital for MFC. The other thing as well, we can do both pick and replenishment at the same time, where with shuttles, etc., you do need to balance that. It's incredibly flexible, so we can fit in the various ceiling heights. We could design it for the various ceiling heights and shapes of any room that's given over to us in an existing store. And it's a very green solution, we find as well. It uses a lot less energy than some of the other systems. And probably the big one as well is you can expand Autostore. You can put it in for what's needed, and then you can expand it without, crucially, stopping the operation, because we can't really stop the operation in an MFC. So let's talk about a typical operation for a retail-based MFC or micro-fulfilment center. When we think about it, like a normal supermarket, items are categorized down into ambient, frozen, and chilled. And as we know from our own shopping baskets that come, the majority is ambient. There's quite a lot of chilled, and normally very little frozen. So we need to consider that, and that seems simple at first glance. But then when we start to consider that some of these ambient items can be very fast moving and can be quite large, as well as the chilled as well, it becomes a little bit more complex. And if we look to the right there, there's some good examples where bananas, ambient and fast, and toilet roll, etc., kitchen roll is both ambient and large. So how do we deal with that operationally within a retail-based MFC? Well, if we look at the diagram I've shown on here, if we think about it as A movers, your fastest movers, B movers, and then your slower moving C movers, it makes no sense for us to put the A movers into an automated system like Autostore, because they're so fast, and often they come in merchandising units, typically, say, for ambient things like egg shippers or banana boxes on dollies. There's a lot of standardized merchant users. There is no sense for us to decant that into an Autostore bin only to pick it out again. So a lot of this fast picking, we would keep that as a manual fast pick. And that's the same is true for chill as well. For frozen on the far side here, we don't automate that as a rule, and I'll show you this shortly in a minute, but we would traditionally manually pick frozen, and that can be done in store, that we're seeing quite often. So we're actually utilizing the facility within the existing store and picking the frozen, or in some of the larger MFCs, we're having a separate frozen area with cabinets and or chests in it. So the engine part of the MFC automation is really utilized for the Bs, which is the majority of the SKUs and the majority of the items picked as well. So these are your B movers, and they will be housed in an Autostore, and we will have two separate Autostores, an ambient Autostore and a chilled Autostore. And then for the C movers, we do like to leverage the actual store itself for the C movers, because what we find with C movers, both ambient and chill, is although they're slow moving, they do account for a lot of the SKUs within a store. If a typical MFC has 15,000 SKUs, it could be that 5,000 of those are very slow movers. And you'll see a picture of kimchi on there. I happen to like jarred kimchi, but I also happen to know it's a very slow mover. So it makes very little sense for us to put that in automation when it can be picked from store and then often picked as a batch, taken back to the MFC itself, and then repicked again. A little bit of double handling, but it has no viability to put these C movers in there. So what does a typical retail-based MFC solution look like? I'll take you through that. So we've got our receiving area, and what we do see is that we are sharing that facility with the store itself. So they would come in typically from the RDC of a supermarket, and we also see that they consider the MFC as a separate store. So we will have our own deliveries, but they will be received at that same point. So that could be in the form of roll cages, merchandising units, pallets, etc. We take the products from receiving into the MFC, and then the B movers will be decanted in Autostore. You're seeing two Autostores here. This is an ambient Autostore, and this one's a chilled Autostore, and you can tell that with the difference inside. So we would decant the products or put it away into the Autostore bins. We've also got a fast pick area. So for the A movers, they'll come from goods in, go into the MFC, and then be positioned, like I said, about merchandising, using it, etc. We've got an ambient Autostore pick for the B movers, and that's to picking all of those large quantities of SKUs, etc. And we have a chilled fast pick area and a chilled Autostore pick area. And then, as I discussed in the previous slides, the C movers we would pick from store. We've also got a value added services area. And when all those picks have happened and typically picked to delivery tote, we would have a consolidation area. And I'll touch on that a little bit shortly. We have a click and collect area, or curbside collection as they would know it in the US, and a home delivery docks for the vans to be loaded up and then sent out for delivery to you and I. And this all sits within the remit of the superstore area, and works very nicely with a customer's car park because they're particularly well set up for that. So drilling into a bit, what I wanted to stress was we often look at the simple and the flexible in these solutions. I think as we've evolved, we've realized that simplicity is by far the best solution. And for picking, we'll often use an Autostore port and then pick directly to trolley. And this is a very simplistic trolley that I've shown on here, but I think you will get the understanding of that. So we'll pick directly to those trolleys, and we'll pick one order at a time. We don't batch pick at all. Now, the good thing about picking to trolleys like this, it does mean that when we're not in peak period, we can use these same ports that would normally be picking ports for put away as well. So it is very flexible like that by using trolleys and not having conveyor position to it. However, as the system evolves and grows and needs more throughput, we can implement a conveyor solution as a retrofit as well. And this simplicity, it also applies to the consolidation. So typically in the consolidation area, we tend to deploy live storage. We can use shuttle-based consolidation methods as well, but we find live storage works really well because it's simple, it's very reliable, and the stock's already there and available to pick out. We obviously drive this by pick by light, and we integrate that with sync software, so that's all driven. We can evolve that and have that auto-loaded by systems. And the other thing to think about is there is floor marshalling that could do the same thing. It depends on what's onward bound. But let's talk about software. So really the driver of any system, automated system, is the software. And Swisslog have a very advanced software called Sync. And we have found that we've needed to evolve this a lot to suit MFCs because they have particular requirements. Looking at that in more detail, for a normal automated system, there is some prerequisites, some musts that we must use, and any system must be easy to use. Its interface must be very intuitive. It must be very quick to learn because often there's temporary labor. And it must be foolproof and have a lot of checks in place. It needs to be able to allow scanners, barcode readers, checkweighers, etc. And all transactions need to be in real time We need to be able to handle exceptions and reconciliations. And crucially, it needs to be able to interface with different software, ERPs, or indeed WMSs, whether that be SAP, Manhattan, JD Edwards, etc. And for grocery, it needs to be compliant with cold chain. And Sync does all that excellently. But where we have had to evolve it is within MFCs, where we have to do additional things like manage shelf lives and best by dates. We've had to evolve loose picking and labeling so that operatives can pick chilled items, let's think oranges or something like that, that they can pick them, weigh them, label them, and all that's facilitated within Sync. We also have to manage things like incompatibility of family groups. So what I mean by that is we wouldn't want to store fresh food produce with things like SIF cleaner, where we know the tops can come off those and contaminate them. So we have all that facility in Sync to be able to guide the operative to make sure that we don't contaminate the end customers, or me and you, products. We have to track and organise a fast-moving inventory, and we obviously have to pick ahead of time, get ready for deliveries, and store those orders and consolidate them. We have to link in with your SMS servers for text notifications. And the real skill is all of these different areas where we have fast pick, manual, we have pick from store and picking from Autostore. Sync needs to be able to synchronize and consolidate all those in a very slick process, and it does that excellently. And we have to organize that consolidation at pickup as well for the operatives. So there's a lot we have to do in Sync, and we've learned so much, and it is a great solution now. And you know, it's quite exciting to see what's going on there. So I did want to talk about some lessons learned as well. We've been on a journey with MFC, and I did say to you earlier on that our friends in North America have really been pioneers, and we've learned a lot, and in partnership with our customers evolved a solution. But to share some of these learnings with you, in general, one of the things we've found is that having this global presence and having subsidiaries in North America and in Asia, when we've deployed these systems, these learnings have been able to improve the whole solution for everybody. The other thing we've found is that retailer specific operational requirements. So whereas we would like to roll out a totally standard solution, we do know that it has to be right for the particular retailer, and we can design specifically around that, both in hardware, operation, and in software. Flexibility is absolutely vital that we find, and that's why Autostore is very good as well. But having a solution that's very flexible, and that can change with a retailer's operation as they develop and evolve, and as external influences evolve. And really, we found that reliability is so critical, and we've also learned that we need to keep these solutions as simple as possible. Hence, in the solution I showed you a moment ago, you will see that we haven't deployed conveyors. So conveyors are great where necessary, but if we don't need them, we'd rather not use them, because it adds another layer of complexity, and we want to keep it simple and reliable. So operationally, we found that we do need to have a very strong partnership, as you would naturally expect, with the customer, but not just at the corporate level and from a software point of view, but also at the store level, because it's all about teamwork. So we do need to have that strong partnership. One thing that we have found as well is that operatives within stores really like working in MFCs, and particularly like the automation, and they do gravitate towards Autostore. Autostore itself, we're finding it exceptionally robust, and we have had very little downtime with it. It's exceptionally safe as well. Connected with this robustness, we find that our support and service personnel are not needed. In fact, they're not wanted. We don't want people there doing nothing. And as I mentioned earlier on about robustness, we do find that your supervisors often, when trained sufficiently, can retrieve a robot and then get it going again. And then we obviously support that with a service with KPIs to get and to fix anything when that robot's taken off. But we find that often they're not needed because Autostore is so robust. Once again, as I did mention, we see that MFCs are treated as a separate store by our regional fulfillment centres, RDCs. In terms of software, we have found that it has to be very robust and stable, and Sync ticks that very nicely. We've seen that we have had to evolve Sync a lot to meet these requirements and make it so well suitable for the system. And often we'll have to do specific bespokes, hence why we've got 560 people, specific bespokes for specific operations to make it as efficient as possible. And we also find this very strong support for software and Sync is really critical for the uptime, because ultimately we can't fail here, because we don't want any supermarket or retailer or grocer to lose a customer. And we're all, you or I, are customers of supermarkets, and we know how we feel if an order is not delivered. So to summarize, hopefully it's been very short, around 30 minutes, I think. We've given you a flavour of what we've been looking at and some learnings. I've had to keep it fairly general, but we will be delighted to talk to you in more detail. Reach out to us via the IMHX Connect portal, book in an appointment with us, or reach out to us from Swisslog. But we will be delighted to discuss whatever your needs are or any concerns. And thank you for your time.